Hello, everyone. Welcome to the weekly Dharma Gathering. My name is Alex Van Gils, and I'm one of the hosts of Weekly Dharma Gathering. Tonight's session will be led by Ashley Dinges and is titled Warriorship Within Chaos. Ashley will lead us through a guided meditation, a Dharma talk, and afterwards there can be an opportunity for some question-answer discussion. Tonight's session will be recorded, so if you prefer to not be seen, you can turn off your camera feature. Please note that you will also be recorded when asking a question. Also, if you have a question during the guided instruction or the talk, please feel free to enter it into the chat box at any time, and we'll be able to address it during the discussion period. The recording of tonight's gathering will be accessible within the next 48 hours via your purchased products area on the Vimeo Weekly Dharma Gathering site, and you'll receive an email notification once it's posted. Ashley Dinges is a meditation teacher and practitioner in the Shambhala Buddhist lineage and is a student of Sakyong Mipo Rinpoche and Ani Pema Chödrön. She is based in Brooklyn, New York, and is an award-winning marketing and communications executive. Ashley currently serves as the Director of Marketing and Sales for G4 Productions, a Tony Award-winning theatrical producer, and holds an MBA from the NYU Stern School of Business. She's a co-founder of this Weekly Dharma Gathering online platform, where teachers from many lineages explore Dharma in relation to issues of race, gender identity, and living meaningfully in a challenging world. So, Ashley, thank you for leading us tonight, and I will turn to you for our guided meditation instruction.
Thank you, Alex. Hi, Michelle. And we will probably have other people, hopefully other people coming. If not, I do want to just take a moment and acknowledge this feels like a particularly painful day in the world, given everything that's going on in Louisville and some of the announcements that have come out around Breonna Taylor's death. And so I just want to start by acknowledging that I was feeling a lot of resistance to even giving a talk tonight, just kind of thinking like, well, here I am, like who am I to be, I don't know, what value do I have weighing in? What can I contribute? And kind of like just going through a lot of the questions that actually are things I want to talk about in the talk tonight, and working with uncertainty around how we show up in the world and how that we can be helpful, especially when things particularly just don't feel workable and feel really overwhelming. So I went through a little bit of an arc, and this isn't normally how I begin my classes, but I do think it's important to kind of just take a moment and address that and acknowledge how you're feeling, how I'm feeling, and just allow some space for that. And we'll also have a lot of space and feeling come into our meditation practice as well tonight. I'm not going to do this normally, or like how I would normally do it. So I'm actually going to start with the talk and then move into the meditation practice after the talk, because I would like to sort of set up a lot of the terms that I'm talking about when I speak about warriorship and what that means in relation to the tradition that I teach and practice in, which is the Shambhala Buddhist tradition. So we'll do a little bit of discussion at the beginning around a lot of these terms and ideas. And then the practice that we'll do together is kind of an active practice in terms of like really working with developing confidence and awareness of what kinds of qualities and strengths that we possess inherently and how we can use those to be of benefit in the world. So this will be like an active practice and contemplation. So sorry, Alex, it's not going to be exactly how you said it, but and then so I have around 45 minutes of material and practice, and then we'll have some time at the end for just open discussion and wrapping up. So yeah, that's what we'll do. Are there any questions or anything before we start? Okay. So I was you know, I already kind of expressed how I've been feeling today, just feeling really a particular sense of weight in the world. And I think today in particular felt like a bit of a blow to moving toward a more just society that really values and protects people no matter their background, their race, their sexual orientation. And I've been pretty engaged in New York this summer with a lot of the protests and things that have been happening. And so today has just felt really difficult, particularly. And I feel like this is kind of exactly the point of what I was planning to talk about. So I'm going to try to use those feelings as the basis for how I share, how I relate to some of these ideas of warriorship and bravery and fearlessness. I attended an online retreat a couple of weeks ago with Ani Pema Chodron, and someone specifically asked her questions about activism and relating to systemic oppression and injustice. And the answer that she gave, which I feel I really appreciated, because I think it's important to kind of address these things head on in terms of the way we relate to Dharma. But paraphrasing her response, she basically said something along the lines of like, you just have to keep talking to people who listen. You have to keep pointing out injustice. You have to keep calling things out, and you have to keep moving forward. And I do really believe that this is not a moment, given the state of the world, to stop engaging or stop turning away. And it is a moment to lean in relentlessly without hesitation. It's a moment to lean hard into being of help, being of value, and also taking care of ourselves in the process of doing that. So warriorship is the topic of tonight's talk. And I think it's fitting, because that unwillingness to back down, the unwillingness to let our hearts harden, to let ignorance and laziness and fear overtake us, is exactly what we mean when we're talking about engaging with warriorship and talking about engaging with a very tremendously difficult world. I think one of the greatest challenges of the time that we're living in is figuring out how to be helpful. So actually figuring out what it is that we can uniquely contribute to our world and to our society and our families and relationships that can be of benefit. So I feel like identifying that can be quite challenging, but it's also possible through contemplative practice. And sometimes we, or at least I do, I know I do this, I think of meditation practice as a way to, I wouldn't say space out, but to separate and slow down from life instead of really kind of synthesizing it into my life. And so that's something I'm working with myself. But basically, what I'll talk about tonight is Shambhala, sort of the Shambhala definition of warriorship and how that's taught, and then using that as a reference point to explore how contemplative practice can be a tool to find ways to expand out and to participate more actively in the world. So the idea of warriorship in my tradition primarily comes from the teachings of Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who's the founder of the Shambhala lineage. And a lot of what I'll discuss comes from this book, which is called Sacred Path of the Warrior. So it's even in the title of the book. It's sort of everywhere in this book. In fact, the beginning of the book is called How to Be a Warrior. But he defines this in one line, and I think this one line kind of says the whole thing, which is that the essence of warriorship is refusing to give up on anything or anybody. And when we say that, we're included in that as well. So we're also not giving up on ourselves. And this idea of warriorship is not warriorship based in aggression, the way we might think of a warrior or a fighter, but it's a warriorship that results directly from practicing fearlessness. So by addressing our fear, acknowledging fear, leaning into fear with vulnerability, with spaciousness and an open heart, we're practicing warriorship. Not in the sense of trying to gain something or take something away from someone else or conquer something necessarily, but I almost like to think of it as just expanding out in space and allowing ourselves to be touched by the world. So this is an active practice. We are actively kind of deciding that we're going to show up for the world and for our lives. And it can be compared to, it's similar to the Mahayana view of bodhisattva activity, but I think that it's a little bit different because we're really talking about the lens through which we orient ourselves and orient our actions. And I want to read a passage because I think that this passage kind of sums the whole thing up. And I have pretty much been reading and rereading this passage relentlessly because I think that it is one of the few examples that I've had in a Dharmic text about pointing to exactly how we might take direct action in the face of feeling helpless or feeling overwhelmed. And again, this comes from the book I held up earlier, which is Sacred Path of the Warrior. Warriorship here does not refer to making war on others. Aggression is the source of our problems, not the solution. Here, the word warrior is taken from the Tibetan pawo, which literally means one who is brave. Warriorship in this context is the tradition of human bravery or the tradition of fearlessness. On our planet Earth, there have been many fine examples of warriorship. The key to warriorship and the first principle of Shambhala vision is not being afraid of who you are. Ultimately, that is the definition of bravery, not being afraid of yourself. Shambhala vision teaches that in the face of the world's great problems, we can be heroic and kind at the same time. Shambhala vision is the opposite of selfishness. When we are afraid of ourselves and afraid of the seeming threat that the world presents, then we become extremely selfish. We want to build our own little nests, our own cocoons, so that we can live by ourselves in a secure way. But we can be much more brave than that. We must try to think beyond our homes, beyond the fire burning in the fireplace, beyond sending our children to school or getting up to go to work in the morning. We must try to think, how can we help this world? If we don't help, nobody will. It is our turn to help the world. At the same time, helping others does not mean abandoning our individual lives. You don't have to rush out to become the mayor of your city or the president of the United States in order to help others, but you can begin with your relatives and friends and the people around you. In fact, you can start with yourself. The important point is to realize that you are never off duty. You can never just relax because the whole world needs help. I'm skipping forward because I just wanted to address this one last passage at the end, which is the premise of Shambhala vision is that in order to establish an enlightened society for others, we need to discover what inherently we have to offer the world. So to begin with, we should make an effort to examine our own experience in order to see what it contains that is of value in helping ourselves and others to uplift their existence. So I just want to read that last one more time because I really, this is kind of the key for me. So to begin with, we should make an effort to examine our own experience in order to see what it contains that is of value in helping ourselves and others to uplift their existence. So when we talk about that, what we're really saying is, can we, or we're asking the question, can we, is it possible to not only identify what we have to offer that is of value, to name it, to kind of dig it out from the depths of our inner being, and then have the confidence to identify it, name it, and act from that place. And I think that that is a very, sounds simple, but it's not a simple thing for a lot of us to do. So it's really a practice of developing confidence. We're talking about identifying something within us that we can use to be of help and of benefit, and then having the confidence to act from that point of view. So how does this tie into meditation practice? I think often we think about meditation practice as, when we talk about familiarization or identifying our own patterns, our habitual patterns, a lot of the time that gets put into this sort of negative bucket or has a negative connotation, meaning that we're looking for things that are wrong with us to try to fix through meditation practice. Like, oh, I'm very neurotic, I think about the same thing all the time, or oh, you know, I daydream a lot. So when we start meditating, that's often something that happens. But when we talk about familiarization, and that is also one way of translating the word meditation, to become familiar with, we're talking also about becoming familiar with not just our own minds and the way that they work, but becoming familiar with our strengths too. So sometimes I think when we are doing self-work and working with our minds in this way, we often think about that only from the point of view of things that need to be improved upon. But we could actually think about it from the point of view of, what do I have to offer, and what am I confident about in myself? And that comes from the point of view of knowing that we have something at all to offer to begin with, which is kind of the whole practice. So I'm going to use this whole idea of warriorship and of building confidence and becoming familiar with ourselves to have a slightly different flavor of meditation practice that really takes a little bit of a look at not only how we're feeling and what's coming up for us, but really takes a look at what strengths we have and where we might start to look to be of benefit. And so the practice tonight will begin with a feeling-based meditation practice. This is something that I often teach and practice. Feeling being an examination of how we feel, how our body feels, how our psychological mind and emotional experience feels. So not just really relating to what emotion am I experiencing, but actually saying, what am I feeling in my body now? And then from that ground, we'll use that to contemplate the qualities, values, strengths, things that we appreciate about ourselves and then can offer out to the world. And sometimes I find that doing this, it's very similar to if you have practiced loving kindness meditation. So it's very similar to the beginning of loving kindness meditation, where we might find something to appreciate about ourselves. And often I think, as I've taught loving kindness meditation over the years, a lot of people have a difficult time with the first part, which is appreciating ourselves. But if we can start to do that, it recalibrates things a little bit. And I think that self-appreciation part is very important to be able to do this kind of work and to not feel like we're failing or feel like we're not doing enough or like we don't have anything to offer. So we'll do this together, and I'll guide us. I'll speak a little bit. We'll talk more at the end. We'll have time for discussion. But you can just follow along. This is a very kind of straightforward practice in terms of the actual meditation practice. So it's a mindfulness of breath practice, and we'll relate to our body and our body breathing and the way that we feel. And then we'll walk through a pretty simple contemplation together, again, that just touches on some of these ideas of appreciating ourselves and looking at what we might offer that's of help. Yeah, so I just, I want to once again welcome those who have joined us, and also just once again acknowledge that in this particular moment, and particularly today, we're living and breathing inside of a world that feels or can feel apocalyptic. The sheer overwhelm can feel paralyzing, and it can be difficult, if not seemingly impossible, to figure out how to help. But if we resign ourselves to the way things are, then we allow dignity, compassion, and really the idea of an enlightened society to slip away. So this is a practice of warriorship. We're not shying away from who we are, what we might offer. We are maybe sitting with the discomfort of trying to find something to appreciate about ourselves. I often feel that way too. But I think that doing simple practices like this can support us in developing basic confidence in our own strengths, and really just give us an idea of where to start. So I think at this point I will start the practice. Unless there are any questions or thoughts, I would love to hear people's experience. If you think you disagree or you agree, or any questions, you can always also put them in the chat if I'm talking. Okay, so let's start the practice, and then we'll have a little bit of time at the end for discussion. So go ahead and get comfortable. I recommend, if you can, sit on the floor or on a cushion. That's great. If you're more comfortable in a chair, you just want to make sure that whatever you're sitting on feels well supported. You should feel stable, grounded, having a sense of touching the ground, whether that is your seat on the floor or your feet flat on the floor if you're in a chair. Can make sure that your weight is distributed so that you are not slouching or leaning forward or back. So just noticing kind of your center of gravity. And you could imagine your spine rising out of the pelvis, extending up to the ceiling, sort of that you're being drawn up, like there's a string coming out the top of your head, so that you're extending upward without arching back or slouching forward. Feeling uplifted in your posture. You can rest your arms on the tops of your thighs. Just very gently, your arms should feel like they're supporting your spine. And you can start by gazing out straight in front of you, and you can tuck your chin just very slightly, maybe an inch. You want to release the back of your neck, so any tension that's being held in the neck should loosen. You can also slightly kind of just push your chin back a little bit. You'll feel the tension release. And then let the gaze drop fairly far in front of you on the floor, so 3 to 4 feet. You'll want to keep your eyes open for this practice until we close them, which I'll guide us through. And while you're practicing with eyes open, this can be a very loose gaze on the floor, so you want to avoid fixating or focusing on anything in particular. One way to open your gaze is to bring some awareness to your peripheral vision. So that'll help to open up your entire field of vision. So just having an awareness of the sides of your sight. And at this point, you can do a very light body scan. So just noticing if there's anywhere in the body that feels particularly tense or tight. Maybe doing a light scan of your facial muscles, releasing any tension in the jaw, around the eyes. You can also rest your tongue on the roof of your mouth and let your jaw hang open just slightly to relieve any tension there. Moving down into your shoulders, torso, arms, down into your legs and feet. You can use your out breath to breathe out any tension or stress that's being held by your muscles. This is meant to be a check-in with your body. So if anything feels uncomfortable, please move and adjust so that you're comfortable. And here you can start to just bring a very light awareness to the cycle of the breath in the body. So noticing the air coming in, into the nose and mouth, down into the chest, lungs expanding, contracting, air moving back out, dissolving out with the out breath. We're not really focusing on anything in particular here, so not focusing on any kind of moment of the breath, just the entire rhythm of the breath, the cycle, almost like a wave rolling over and out. You can have a light sense of awareness on your environment. So the noises, temperature, sounds, other beings, animals, people in the space around you can be part of your practice. We're not pushing things away, but we are using the breath as the point of awareness. So we're placing our attention on the breath still, but again, with a light sense of the space that we're occupying. And at this point too, you can just take a moment to ask yourself, how am I feeling? And you don't have to feel like you're forcing an answer. You can just notice if you're feeling any physical sensations, emotions, energy. When we ask ourselves this question, you could consider it like giving yourself permission to feel how you're feeling. We're not making a big deal about it or creating a storyline around it, but really just being present with ourselves and our experience. Part of practicing gentleness and meditation is really being present for ourselves as we are without having to change how we're feeling. So when we check in like this with ourselves, it's allowing us to just be as we are. You can take a few deeper breaths, and with those out breaths, you can allow that contemplation to dissolve. You don't have to let go of how you're feeling or change anything again, but you can just let the active contemplation go with a few deep in breaths and out breaths. And then bring your awareness back to the feeling of the breath cycle in the body. I would invite you to close your eyes now, and we will walk through a contemplation. I will ring the rin to start and end. But for now, you can just continue focusing on this feeling of the breath in the body, placing your awareness on the body breathing very loosely. Again, feeling yourself in the space and the environment that you're in. You can consider this point of awareness on the body breathing as the anchor or starting point. And if at any point you want to drop the contemplation and come back here, that's perfectly fine. This is kind of the base for our practice. This will be similar to, again, a loving kindness exploration. You can start by imagining that you're looking at yourself, either in the mirror or that you can see yourself in front of you. You notice how you look, how you see yourself, what you might be wearing. Noticing your features. You could have a sense perhaps of regarding yourself in the way that you might a friend or someone that you care about. And you could imagine, again, looking at yourself as you might a friend. And from that point of view, just noticing something that you appreciate about yourself. Maybe a quality that you have that you are particularly fond of. Or something that others appreciate about you, the way people make you, the way that you make people feel. You could appreciate your health if you're able-bodied, physical health. Perhaps if you have stability in your life at this moment or contentment, you could appreciate that. And you could maybe think of one of your strengths. Maybe it's communication skills or art or creativity or compassion. And then on your next out breath, you can let that image dissolve. You can wish yourself well. Imagine that image of yourself dissolving with the out breath. You can bring your attention back to the body breathing, cycle of breath in the body. And we'll just rest here in silence, in this spaciousness, in this feeling of having dissolved the contemplation and the thoughts. And we'll rest here in silence for a few moments together. You can open your eyes now. Maybe bring some movement back into the body, wiggling your fingers and toes, and stretching out your neck and shoulders. So this is kind of a simple practice, but I think that a lot of the time, I know I mentioned this before, but I think a lot of the time that we start a path of contemplative practice or start working with our minds and working with things that are often considered like self-improvement or trying to change something about ourselves or the way we're living, it can be seen as coming from a sense of like poverty mentality of I have something to fix or change about myself and I can do that through X, Y, and Z. But when we do practices like this, whether it's loving kindness flavored in this way or even doing Tonglen for ourselves, what begins to happen is usually there's some period of feeling kind of awkward and weird about it. And well, why am I, looking at myself and appreciating myself? But it does have a sense of softening, which allows us to get a little bit more inquisitive about our experience and then really begin to figure out how can I be of help. So you might, again, you might have noticed I'm in a stable situation. I have financial resources. I can do something with that. I'm able-bodied. I can protest or I can be of service to someone who's not. I am a good communicator, so I can communicate with people who otherwise other people might have difficulty communicating with or can't see eye to eye with. I might be able to see things really clearly and relate truth to people. So it's a great way to start relating to those strengths that we have and coming from a place of richness and appreciation of ourselves. And I would love if there are any questions or if anyone would like to share their experience of the practice or thoughts, please, it's kind of just, it'll just be a little open here at the end.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I guess it's not really a question, but I guess the only thing that's happening right now for me is that ever since the pandemic started, I've just been feeling like my energy is very low, like my ability to complete things is just like very low. And so I'm just wondering how in this time when like we're called, like so much is called for, like it's hard not to feel like you're failing because I feel like I can't do as much as I would before because I'm just so, I don't know, anxious, scared. I
missed
don't
the
know
last.
how. I guess it's just you just do some. I guess it's just that you do something. Just start somewhere small.
Yeah, I can hear you now. I heard there was a little gap in what you said, but I think I got it. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Yeah, this is a really interesting question. I also heard this question. So I think there's a lot of ways to approach this. I think what you said, it has a lot of wisdom, which is that you just do something. So there's even like somewhere in this book, there's a passage that says like, just do it, which is kind of like, you know, the Nike thing, but it's true. It's like, I think well, okay. So there's definitely fatigue. There's a lot of fatigue. I personally am experiencing that. I feel like I don't have the physical energy to be showing up the way that I was previously before earlier this year. Someone asked this to Ani Pema in the weekend program or somewhere, and the way she described it is that you basically have to figure out what the ratio of self-care and action is for you. So at different points in your life, that might mean more rest and taking care of yourself and a little bit of action. And then when you feel like you're rested and when you feel like you have more to offer, or when you feel like you can show up different physically, maybe that becomes like, you know, 1 part resting and 2 parts action, and whatever that combination is, it may change for you at different times, but that you sort of just the idea of acknowledging it is also enough to kind of, you know, just give yourself permission to know that you do need to rest and take care of yourself, and that this is an intense time. And when you may be feeling fine physically, there can also be other things going on emotionally. So, or it just, you know, I find that figuring out a place to even start, to even find the entry point is difficult. So if you're limited in time or energy or just kind of the emotional resources to do things, you could also think about, well, what can I do that would make an immediate impact with like the least amount of work, just to start, so that you start doing something. And I think it's really, really important to check in with yourself ongoingly. And maybe you make an intention to do that at the beginning of your meditation practice, just to say like, okay, I've gone too far. This is too much. I need to come back. I need to focus on self-care. I need to rest. And then I'll go back out and take more action again. So you're just really aware of what's going on for you, and you're able to make decisions and because that's really how ultimately you'll be able to be helpful, is if you're taking care of yourself, you're feeling like you're offering what you can, and you're really leaning into what you can offer, and then you come back and you rest again, so that you're repeating that cycle. And it's really and that you're aware of what's going on. I don't know if that's helpful. I think it's so challenging right now. And I personally too am really struggling with physical fatigue. And that is very frustrating as somebody who was previously extremely active. So I can use also my own example, which is like, okay, well, I can get on Zoom and I can lead a discussion on Zoom, and that might be really helpful for people to go out and go forward. And then I need to like take a few days and sleep in. I need to take care of myself. And then it's also important to me that I go to a demonstration. So then I'm going to pick one, and I'm going to do that intentionally and go to it and set a plan for myself, even if it's not a lot of stuff that I'm doing, just so I feel like there's intention behind it. And I'm saying like, I know where I am right now. I know what's going on for me. And based off of that, this is what I can offer. Because I think that shifts it too. And then again, you're not coming at it from the point of view of I'm not doing enough. You're saying, I looked at myself, I looked at my experience. This is what I can offer, and this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I think that is helpful. also just can't compare what's happening now to what we were like earlier in the year. I just can't really, this is now, it's not February. So I can't really compare what I would have done in February to what I can do now.
That's really important. It's really important because we can get hung up on how things were, or we can get hung up on where we might go, but where we might go may look very different from where we came from too. So it's important to just say, based on where I am now, based on how I'm feeling, what is it that I can do?
Actually, I was wondering if I could just ask a little something. So the practice that you led is really kind of meaningful, and it also seems like it's the kind of thing that works best inside of a kind of the container that you set, like as we were doing it. And I'm wondering what you recommend in terms of kind of touching in with that question for yourself, like when you're in the midst of your life, or whether when you're kind of going into a situation, or whether when you're in the middle of a situation, you're feeling like something is being asked of you, or you need to engage. Basically, like, is there a kind of like a takeaway version, or on the go kind of contemplation that's connected to this?
That's a good question. That's kind of a tough one. I hadn't thought about that version of it, but I think there are ways to. So I think the first part of the practice, it's not that dissimilar from if you've practiced Tonglen. So envisioning open space, kind of vastness, setting up that container as you go into Tonglen. So I find that grounding into feeling first is a good segue into this kind of practice, because we're basically trying to get as comfortable and familiar with ourselves in the present moment as we possibly can. So that is what we're doing when we're trying to do the body scan. That's what we're doing when we're trying to identify our psychological, emotional, physical experience. So there are ways that you can do that. I think moving through the day, I often, some people do that by, like, for example, physical action. So you could even like put your hand on your chest just to kind of connect with your body. You might take a few deep breaths in and out to kind of reset your mind. Maybe if you're in a difficult situation, just connecting with your breathing, or if you feel put on the spot, or you can even do that in a transition moment. So if you're in an elevator, or maybe before you open a door to go into the next space that you're going to move into, just taking a moment to connect with feeling. And then I think that the kind of second part to the practice, which is relating to yourself and confidence in difficult moments, is the hard part because you're on the spot. But I would say that doing this kind of practice where you're actually really thinking about yourself and appreciating yourself and building confidence in things that you trust about yourself can help, because you can lean back on that in difficult moments. Even if it's just to kind of recalibrate and say, wait a minute, I trust myself. I know that I'm confident in XYZ, my abilities, and just maybe pause a moment. If you're in conversation, or if you're in like a difficult situation, pause, give a little bit of space to that, feel your body, and then move out from there. Like, and when I say that, I mean, a lot of times stress or heightened emotions, or when something is moving very quickly, like a situation, a social situation is moving quickly, we're not like, you might feel energy, you might feel vibration or stress or tension in the body. So noticing that, taking a few deep breaths, letting it settle, and then acting from that place is kind of what I'm talking about, I guess, when I'm talking about it in practice. And again, for me, like I find a physical sensation like this, or deep breathing, maybe standing up, moving in the space that you're in. Those are all like kind of, even though they don't seem similar, but they're all like flavors of what I was trying to accomplish with like the feeling-based practice. So, so sometimes just like having that physical reminder can help too. Yeah, that's, I don't know, is that kind of getting at your question?
Very much. Thank you.
One last thing I would say too that I touched on during the practice is the whole idea of everything that we're talking about, and even just the practice of mindfulness, meditation, or mindfulness of breathing practice in my tradition is based in and could not occur without tremendous gentleness to yourself. So that is a huge part of the view of this kind of practice, of any Mahayana practice, any practice that's related to yourself or other people. Lots of emotions can come up, lots of resistance can come up, and be kind to yourself within that. Maybe even like Michelle, to your question, part of working with that feeling is just, again, I think I said this during the meditation, but just giving yourself permission to feel like I'm not doing enough. Okay, that's fine. I feel that way. There's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot happening around me. Where can I go from there? So it's not about necessarily feeling like you're accomplishing something or doing something, but that you are able to just be aware of your experience for yourself and allow a lot of space and kindness around that. I think also, again, with these practices where we're visualizing ourselves and trying to visualize like good things about ourselves, some of that comes up, or feelings of like resistance to that can come up. So again, gentleness is really the key there. It's really the path. I think we're at time, but if there are any last questions, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, I would just, encourage you to try to fold it into your practice and see what it feels like. Notice if you're having difficulty kind of relating to yourself in this way, and then give yourself a lot of space and kindness around that, and just do it. Just try. Just find something that you can offer, even if it feels small, and just do it and see how it feels, and fail and mess up and try again and keep trying.
Well, unless there's any last questions or thoughts from anyone. Thank you, Ashley, and thank you everyone for joining us for tonight's weekly Dharma gathering, or for watching it in the future. Please join us for next week's gathering on Wednesday, September 30th with Duet Cullen, Staying Engaged and Compassionate While Being a Public School Teacher. You can find more information about that on our website. Please consider becoming a subscriber if you are not already. We have a 7-day free trial that you can find on our website. tell your friends. You can find us at weeklydharmagathering.com, and make sure to follow us on Instagram at Weekly Dharma and on Facebook at Weekly Dharma Gathering. So thank you all, and thank you, Ashley, again for teaching us.
Thanks, Alex. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming tonight.
Good night, everyone.